Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military of a Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 27th of December of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And this video once again we will discuss, and we will start this video with the massive missile and drone attack that took place between the 26th and the 27th of December of 2025. This map was published today somewhere at noon time. We have already discussed this attack during the previous video, but this is the map that we haven't discussed. And as you can see, according to this map, the Russians used once again hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles. The Russians were using almost every single type of weapon they have. They used drones, they used cruise missiles, they used ballistic missiles, they used, let's say, caliber missiles and so on. And the Russians used hypersonic missiles. According to this map, the Russians used hundreds of drones. A few hours later, Ukrainian sources published this article where we can see the approximate number of air vehicles that Russia used during this attack. According to Ukrainian sources, Russia used 559 air vehicles, including drones and missiles altogether. Obviously, this is not the biggest attack on Ukraine since the beginning of the special military operation, but I would like to point to attention that this is the biggest attack when talking just about the city of Kiev and the Kiev region. So, too many missiles, too many drones were launched just at one city, at the city of Kiev. So obviously this is something like this. And of course, during the day, we were receiving lots of updates, lots of videos of attacks, of consequences of attacks. We saw lots of grand drones that were flying above the city of Kiev and attacking different buildings and so on. But the most important thing is that this attack hasn't been stopped yet. So despite the fact that a lot of things were already published, like videos, like articles, like maps and so on, pro-Ukrainian sources this evening are saying that the attack hasn't been finished. It's already, this attack lasts for 60 hours and Russians continue attacking the city of Kiev. So during the upcoming night, we will see more videos and more attacks from the Russian side. And of course, the question is why the Russians are doing this on the 27th of December, right before the end of the year. As of course, you might say that the Russians are attacking in critical infrastructure, and the Russians indeed attacked today critical infrastructure of Ukraine just because they want to force Zelensky to accept demands of the Russian side. And as you know, today Zelensky is going to travel to the United States of America, where he's going to have a meeting with the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. Zelensky is flying to the United States of America with the purpose, for the last time, to convince the President of the United States of America to accept Ukraine's Zelensky's 20-point plan. Ukraine has its own red lines, including territorial issues and the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. Despite this, Kiev and Moscow have opportunities to reach a peace agreement. That was stated by Zelensky. So, ahead of the talks with Trump, the president of Ukraine gave an interview to Ukraine media where he stated, Ukraine has made many compromises. This is reflected in our 20-point plan. Ukraine is ready to do anything that can stop the war. That was stated by the president of Ukraine right before he started his travel to the United States of America. So once again, he will try to fight for his 20-point plan once again, and most likely for the last time in 2025. And this is a very strange thing because, for example, today several pro-Russian sources, including the Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov, said lots of interesting things. For example, he emphasized that Ukraine has distributed a settlement plan that differs radically from the one Russia is working on with the United States of America. So basically, Russians stated today that this 20-point plan has nothing common with the plan that the United States of America and the Russian Federation are working with. And of course, we understand this. Ukraine has its own position, the Russian Federation has its own position, but the most important thing is the statement that was made by the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, today. He said that there is a chance that Russia-Ukraine conflict could be resolved during Zelensky's visit to the United States of America. So this is a very important statement. Well, I think we have a pretty good chances. So this means that most likely when Zelensky arrives on the territory of the United States of America, he will accept something from the US side. And if he accepts something, and if Trump says that we have a pretty good chances, this means that something that would be provided and suggested to Zelensky has been already approved by the Russian Federation. And obviously this is not a 20-point plan created by Zelensky and has his European allies. Furthermore, according to information we have, Zelensky will have a meeting with Trump without his European allies, but Zelensky insisted that this meeting would be under cameras, without not under below the closed door, so everything would be, let's say, on camera. So everything will be on camera. This is a very important statement. So this is most likely demands of the European countries. They want to see everything online and to understand what exactly Trump and Zelensky are talking about. So once again, according to Trump, we have pretty nice chances that this conflict will be finished, but too many different things and too many questions. Now let's return back to Ukraine and let's discuss the situation along the line of combat contact. And first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation. During the previous 24 hours we have received lots of important updates, and most of them concerns additional changes on the ground. So as for the Zaporozhye direction, during the previous 24 hours we have changes, and they are very important around the settlement by the name of Gulay Polya. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 20th of December of 2025, and this is the moment when the final phase of the Russian offensive operation started. The Russians began advancing, and every single day we were coloring this territory under Russian control, and by the end of the 27th of December of 2025 we have almost completely colored the city of Gulay Polya under control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. We believe that in coming days, and maybe even tomorrow, the Russians will announce complete control over the territory. We believe that this is going to happen right after the meeting between Trump and Zelensky finishes. So the meeting finishes, they will make statements, Zelensky and Trump, and then Russians will announce complete control over the territory, or probably before, maybe an hour before. So almost at the same time. So obviously both the Russians and the Ukrainians will try to make media victory, and of course to show that the Russians will try to show that they have better cards. Furthermore, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the direction of the settlement of Ternovate. Today, lots of sources stated that Russians answered the southern part of the settlement. Most likely, they are talking about these farms and these, let's say, buildings along the Miro Street. So most likely in coming days, we're going to start receiving first updates from these territories as well. So the village of Ternovate may fall also in coming days. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians, or 48 or even 72 hours, the Ukrainians began another counter-offensive operation. It seems that this is a final counter-offensive operation of 2025 in the Pokrovsk-Mirnograd direction. Ukrainians are trying to unblock the contingent of the armed forces of Ukraine that is still located on the territory of Mirnograd. So as you can see, we still haven't colored the territory of Mirnograd under control of Russians, because there are still Ukrainians who waits and who thinks that Ukrainians are able to break through this defense and to create a corridor. So this is the last counter-offensive operation in this direction. So let's wait and see what is going to be next. But as of the 27th of December, we have changes. This is the situation by the end of the 26th. The Ukrainians improved their positions in the southern part of the settlement of Rodinska. We came to this conclusion based on this video published by pro-Ukrainian sources, where we can, by pro-Russian source, where we can see Ukrainians running through the settlement, and based on the reports published by different mappers, we added additional gray zone around the Krasnolimanskaya mine and around the settlement of Rodinskaya. Furthermore, we have this video where we can see how Ukrainians, how stormtroopers, how troopers of the armed forces of Ukraine were moving towards the settlement of Rodinskaya, and how Russians were bombing buildings and positions right in front of them with FABs. So we see that Ukrainians are sending more and more infantry in this direction. The Russians control the situation. Obviously, the Russians will try to do everything they can with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to create this corridor for the Mirnograd contingent's evacuation. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Sloviansk direction. The situation here is a very difficult one. According to information we have, the commander of the contingent of the armored forces of Ukraine, who was in charge of the serious defensive operation, lost his position due to his failure around the city of Sloviansk. The Russians continue advancing deep inside of the Sloviansk direction, especially along MO3 road. So we have a lot of updates from this territory that were provided by different mappers, by pro-Ukrainian sources. We see that the Russians are tasked right now to establish control over several, let's say, villages in this direction. We are talking about the settlements of Minkovka, Golubovka, Privilye, Bandarna and Khromovka. These villages are very important. The Russians are advancing towards the settlement by the name of Rai Alexandrovka and Nikolaevka. And this is the last defense layer of the armored forces of Ukraine before the battle for Sloviansk begins. So we are talking about this territory. This is the territory between the Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal and the river of Seversky Donetsk. So we are talking about this territory, and this is a well-fortified and very well-fortified territory where Ukrainians will try to stop the Russians, or at least to slow them down for several months. We have a village of Rai Alexandrovka, we have a settlement of Nikolaevka, and we have the Sloviansk power station. The most important, let's say, station, the most important object on this direction. If Russians are able to establish complete control over the territory, then we can start counting days before the city of Sloviansk falls as well. But as of now, the Russians are still very far from this foothold. It will take 2-3 months before Russians will begin battle for this territory. Now let's talk about the Sloviansk direction. Today we received a very important update. Today, for the first time, probably for the previous 2, 3 or 4 weeks, the Russians improved their positions and we received additional changes on the ground. Pro-Russian sources reported that Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to break through Ukrainian defense and to cut 0526 road physically on the entrance to the city of Liman. So this territory was captured by Russians according to several pro-Russian sources. So this is the changes we are talking about. So they are saying that Russians somehow managed to establish complete control over these farms and that the Russians managed to dig in deeper. This is a very important piece of news because if this information is correct, then most likely Ukrainians who are currently located in these fields around the settlement of Stavki, in these fields and through this gray zone, currently were caught by the Russians in Kuldrun, which means that if the Russians are able to hold their positions along this part of 0526 road, then this will force the Ukrainians to fall back from this territory towards the settlement of Liman. And this retreat can bring completely unpredictable consequences for the entire front line and for the entire defense operation. Because if Ukrainians begin retreating, then most likely the Russians will intensify their offensive operation with the purpose to answer the city of Liman as well. As for the Kupiansk direction, today pro-Russian sources published this video, where we can see lots of Russian soldiers that were talking about the situation in the city of Kupiansk, and the Russians reported that they control the city. The Russians are saying that the situation is difficult, but they control the city, which is very important. So the most important thing that we haven't received even a single episode with Russians, let's say, on the street with the Russian flag. We received lots of episodes with Russian soldiers that were hiding in buildings and basements, and they're saying that the situation is difficult, but we are fighting, which means that there are still Russians. Anyway, let's wait and see. Zelensky will try to improve Ukraine will try to improve its position significantly with the purpose to have better cards before meeting with Trump. And we believe that right before this meeting happens, right before this meeting starts, Ukraine will publish probably a video with flags, with lots of things through the entire city of Kupiansk, just with one purpose, to have better conditions and better negotiation cards with Trump. As for the northern directions, during the previous 12 hours, we received a video from the Pechenegi water reservoir. In this video, we can see how Russians attacked the bridge, one of the most important bridges in this area that Ukrainians use to supply their contingent around the city of Volchansk. This bridge, as you can see according to this video, was completely destroyed, which means that now Russians will try to intensify their offensive operation, and most likely Russians will not allow the Ukrainians to rebuild this bridge. So now Ukrainians most likely have huge problems with logistics, or will start suffering them in coming days, and then Russians will intensify their offensive operation. And that's it for today. Military with Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.